All right, let's pray for a second. God, thank you so much for a time to come together with leaders, people who are moving towards you, trying to figure out how they can impact as many people as possible. I pray that that tonight you would awaken their spirits to see what your plan is with their life and the lives of those around them. They have people that are next door to them who they need a place. They need a place to be. They need a place to be loved. They need a place to be led. And right now, God, you're preparing these people in this room to open up their hearts and homes to people who are hurting and people who just don't know you yet and want to know you and need to know you. So help tonight to be extra special. Help tonight to be blessed by you, and help us to become the leaders you want us to become. In Jesus' name, amen. Tonight we're going to do this DNA piece first, and then we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to have a little bit of fun, and then might be a little bit of drama tonight, maybe. I don't know. The kind of drama, the best kind of drama. And then Carmen's going to talk a little bit about something very, very practical and specific to groups. But tonight I'm going to start out with discipleship. Discipleship, right? So when you go to church, if you grew up in the church, this is a word that you've heard 1,000 times. If you grew up in a church, you might hear them saying, like, what's your discipleship program? You know, what's your discipleship program? If you grew up in the church, then you've heard that when Jesus left earth, he told his followers to go and make disciples. And a disciple is a word that really means follower. It really means that it's a follower of. So when you think about being a disciple, you are one. Everybody in here is a disciple. You might not be a disciple of Jesus, but you are a disciple. You know, who do you follow? Anybody, Dr. Phil? No? Oprah? Dr. Oz? Any disciples of Us Weekly? Any disciples of, like, maybe fantasy football? Colin Cowherd? I am probably just, a little bit disciple of Colin Cowherd. Like that guy a lot. Mike and Mike in the Morning, anybody? No? Guys? Girls? Ashley, who are you a disciple of? Okay, other than Jesus. Are you a disciple of a doctor? Follower? Dr. Lovett? Is that Lyle? Anybody else? Someone that you follow? Just someone that you follow? Who are you a disciple of? Woo! I'm just as surprised as you. Yeah. Sure, yeah. You follow someone, right? Anybody else? Other than church people or Jesus? The Browns. That is called being a wayward apostate. That means falling away. It's a church word for losing the faith when you are a follower of the Browns. So what I want to do tonight is I want to make sure that you understand what discipleship is. That you feel a sense that when you are leading this group and you are leading people, that you are, in fact, carrying out the Great Commission. That you are, in fact, doing the one thing that Jesus said at the end of his ministry. He said, go and make disciples. You have to know that you are doing that one thing, right? I mean, if you're like saying you love Jesus and that means you're going to obey Jesus, then you're going to start at the top of the list, and the top of the list is to make disciples. Now, when you look at church, okay, our church this past weekend, great weekend at our church, almost 850 people in attendance. Our church probably has 1,100, 1,200 people that call it home. Discipleship, and in a church context, what you do is you just say, okay, we need to have the large group where we all come together and someone talks and someone teaches, and then you got to put everyone together in these small groups. And a small group is just a fenced-in area to go, now come over here and grow and eat over here. It's a system, right? Like when you grew up in the schools, you go to your classroom, you sit in your row. You know, we have the alphabet that tells us where we sit and, when we step in line to vote. I mean, it's a system, right? So discipleship has to live and be real inside of the larger church context, right? That's what a small group does. A small group takes you from standing side by side someone, standing shoulder to shoulder with someone, to actually engaging that person and walking through life with that person and seeing that person become a faithful follower of Jesus Christ. And so discipleship is you're going to take somebody and in some way with the right frame of mind, you are going to do something or not do something or say something or be someone to influence them to become a stronger follower of Jesus. So the goal of maturity in Christ is simply not just being a follower of Jesus, but you know that you have become mature when you not only are a follower of Jesus, but you're following Jesus means that you are helping other people follow Jesus. That is a mature, that is someone that has fulfilled what Jesus said, here's what you're going to go do. Go and make disciples. So you become a disciple because someone else obeyed that rule, and then you go and you make someone else a disciple. And so what I want to do with you tonight is take you through what I believe discipleship really is, so that you can see it in a sense and how it fits inside of the small group context. But even bigger than small groups is the one-on-one, the one-on-five, is your ability to help people become a follower of Jesus. That's discipleship. And so the phrase that pays, I'm going to start off with it this week, is giving you kind of what discipleship is, and I would call it this. Discipleship is influence. Discipleship is influence. Again, we're talking about Dave McCreary. He's doing a little bit for Christmas. Oprah's favorite things, David McCreary's favorite things, is kind of what his little thing is going to be about. And, people love Oprah, right? They're followers of Oprah, right? That means something very simple, right? Or if you love Colin Cowherd like I do, that means that I have said, I want that person to influence me. When I was in college, every single night, me and my college roommates would watch Conan, right? And Conan influenced us. We were disciples of Conan. The way that he laughed and the things that he said, that influenced us. And that meant that the way we talked and the way we joked changed based upon who we opened ourselves to have an influence on us. And so, you guys, if you're going to disciple people, then first of all, you have to have the confidence that you are supposed to influence people. That is a huge deal. That you are going to be the person that, however you live your life, that it is going to play a role in the trajectory of someone else's. That's a huge responsibility. For the way that you live, for the things that you say, the things that you don't say, for the places that you go, the places that you don't go, the things that you believe, the things that you don't believe, everything you are, however that's communicated, is going to play a role in influencing. And so you have to take that on. Bill Hybels said that leaders help people make decisions. Man, when you help people make a decision, what are you doing? You are influencing them. You are seeing them go a certain direction because of your input or your influence in their life. Now, here's the thing. If you're going to influence somebody, if you're going to change the trajectory of their life, if you're going to be a part of that decision-making process, as an influencer, someone that God has given me the ability and the responsibility to truly affect where people go, I get calls all the time to have influence. Parents will call me and they'll say, would you sit down with so-and-so and just tell them the schools that you went to? I have a friend that their daughter just decided to go to Grace College. And I went to Grace College where I graduated from, so I had an influence. I had an impact on that. That means that the way I live, what I've done, what I've said, who I am, has affected someone's life. That is a big deal for a leader. You need to own that. You need to say, I'm ready. I am ready to impact people's lives. I want to see people make different kinds of decisions, better kinds of decisions, because I'm influencing them. If you're the kind of person that sits there, and this gets a little into emotional health, you don't believe that you have anything to offer, you don't believe that you can help people make better decisions, you don't believe that you can help people grow in their relationship with God, then you might not be an influencer, and therefore you might have a real struggle with discipling, and you got to work through some of that. But discipleship is influence, and influence comes from somewhere. Influence, you gain influence, you gain traction. It doesn't just happen. You don't just suddenly have the ability, unless you're a parent, to influence someone's life, right? Like when you're a parent, it's like you're a kid, and that's your mom and dad. That's kind of the luck of the draw, right? I mean, they're going to influence you. But in discipleship relationships, influence comes from something very specific, and I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you how you need to figure out how you can do this so that you can make disciples, so that you can have the greatest influence. Influence comes from investment. Influence comes from investment. You see, in the Christian world, there's a little bit of a tension that I can kind of lean this talk against, and that is that people believe that influence or discipleship is about me telling people what to do. It's about me forcing my way on somebody. It's about me teaching somebody, right? Have you ever thought, if you grew up in the church, you thought, I am going to be a discipler, or you're sitting in this room, I need to know a lot of stuff because I have to teach. I am here to tell you tonight that you can be a disciple maker and never teach. You don't have to be a good teacher. You don't have to have a bunch of knowledge in order to influence people. Everyone can influence people because everyone has the ability to go into people's lives and instead of telling them something, give them something. Invest in them. Put into their lives. Constantly give. The more that you invest in somebody, the more influence you will have in their life. I'm going to break that down for you, and I'm going to show you what it says in Scripture. And I also want to just kind of give you a couple of bullet point things on discipleship. Okay? We're talking about discipleship. We're talking about investment. A man that was my greatest influencer, the man that made the biggest impact on my life, the person that made the biggest investment in my life, he did this, and it changed me. And he constantly gave to me. And one of the things that he said about influence is what he believes Jesus modeled in the Bible. His whole approach to investing in me was what he believed that Jesus did. And he told me this. He said this about investment. He said, if you're going to invest in people, then this is the process. This is what's going to happen when you invest in people. And I'm going to kind of break this down. But he said, here's kind of the big thing. When it comes to discipleship, I want you to write this down. I didn't put this in your notes. I want you to write this down. There's a real simple principle that I want you guys to never forget. He said, when you're going to lead people into a growing relationship with Jesus, or you're going to disciple, or you're going to influence people, you're going to invest in them. And what that's going to look like is you're going to go into their world. You're going to go to their territory. That means you're going to give yourself. You're going to give yourself. And I'm going to talk more about what that looks like later. But you're going to go to their territory, and you are going to see what happened with Jesus happen with you. Because what happened with Jesus is Jesus came into our territory. He gathered some people. They went to some places together, and eventually they followed him. They became disciples. And so the trick, the key to influence and discipleship is go to their territory, take them to a neutral territory, and they will end up in your territory. And so when you start to just look at discipleship from a bird's eye view, you are going to see that the basic premise of influence is, I'm coming into the world, I'm going to go to their place, then I'm going to lead them somewhere, I'm going to take them somewhere, which is really another way of giving them something. Come on, let me show you this, let me show you this, let me show you this. Investment, 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 investment. I'm coming to you, I'm giving to you, I'm leading you somewhere, and then when you've done that, the result will be they come to you. And that is kind of the epitome of discipleship. I want to look in Matthew chapter 9. Matthew chapter 9, I'm going to just read through a passage of Scripture. I'm going to have this on the screen, I don't have it in your books. But in Matthew chapter 9, what we see is Jesus Christ is starting his public ministry effort. Now, in the other Gospels, we see this passage, and it happens a lot earlier. In the book of Mark, it happens in the first several chapters. Jesus walks along, calls the first disciple, Matthew, and says, come and follow me. In Mark, it happens early. In Matthew, it happens in Matthew chapter 9. And what I want to show you is that Jesus has spent a year investing in the community, and he has spent a year being around people, doing miracles, and being a part of them, going to their territory, meeting them where they are, when Matthew chapter 9 hits, and he starts to actually call his first disciples. Now, up until this point, Jesus has gone to the tabernacle, and he's taught. He's given. He goes to the tabernacle. He shows up. He starts teaching. He starts teaching them about Isaiah. People are listening to him. They're going, this guy is different than anybody else. Immediately, someone starts calling him rabbi. Rabbi. That meant that there was a religious teacher in the land that was causing some buzz because the things he was saying were different. They were powerful. He started to do some miracles, and people were going, this guy is worth following. Now, in that culture, I've taught about this on a Sunday morning, and I'm just not going to get into all of it. But essentially, young Jewish boys, they would grow up, and they would have these trades that their dad would have. They would do those trades for a little while, and when they got to a certain age, they would go to this one particular school where essentially they would be tested, and they would find out whether or not they had the chops to be a rabbi. And if they didn't pass the test, if they didn't really gel, if they didn't have the kind of the characteristics and the knowledge to become a rabbi, which in that culture was the greatest position of influence, then they would just get shipped back to dad, and they would have to just kind of join the family business or become a farmer or whatever it was that made the most sense in order to just be a man in that society and earn and have a family. But if you really had it, then you would elevate through that, and you would become a rabbi. And when you turned, I think, 18, you would get this opportunity to become a follower of a rabbi. And so there were these teachers, and they would go and they would see these students, and they would break them down, kind of like training camp. You bring all these guys from the draft, and some of them are okay. Then they send some of them away. Then they get to the preseason games, and at the end of the preseason games, like, we're going to keep these 4 guys. And that's exactly what the rabbis would do. They would go, yes, they would go, no, 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 get rid of him, get rid of him, get rid of him. And then he would go, hey, you 4 guys, or you 1 guy, if you really want an opportunity to follow me and grow more, now's your chance. And that meant that that student had an opportunity to become the greatest kind of influencer. And so when Jesus, after becoming a rabbi, and people are knowing him kind of in an unconventional way, going around teaching, not necessarily going through the education system, but going around teaching, doing miracles, he is now at this point, after a year of calling himself Messiah and doing miracles and people knowing that he is a rabbi, he is at this point where he's going, now I'm going to pick my followers. So when you come to Matthew, what you have is a guy that not only didn't make the cut in terms of becoming a rabbi, you have a guy who got the worst job. He didn't just go back to work and be a farmer or a carpenter or a mason and help build up the community of his people and his family. He actually went and got a job with the other team. He said, I'm going to go work for the Romans. The Jews hate the Romans. I'm going to work for the Romans, and I'm going to be a tax collector against my fellow countrymen. I'm going to take their money and then take whatever I can for myself from my countrymen. So this was a guy that was like, you didn't make it in the Jewish rabbinical system. You also didn't jump in and help out And now you're working with this horrible, oppressive nation, the Romans, and you're with them. Jesus comes along, and he's like going to have this guy jump on his team. Now, what you see, and I want to read through this with you, is what you see an unbelievable gift, an investment. Hey, man, I know you didn't make it, and I know that these people think that you're awful and you can't, but you have an opportunity. If you would like to be, I'm going to give you so much. I'm going to pour into you if you want to follow me, and I'm going to have you become an influencer by giving to you. Jesus made the decision with Matthew to make a huge investment in someone that probably didn't deserve it. And because of that, because of giving, Matthew is part of these 12 disciples that, after it's all said and done, changed the world. So I just want to show you that Jesus is starting to get a name for himself, and then he gets these people to follow him. So I'm just going to read through this. In Matthew chapter 9, it says this. Some men brought to him, that's Jesus, a paralyzed man lying on a mat. This is the story of Jesus being in a house, right? And they open up the ceiling, and they drop this man down in a mat, and he's paralyzed. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to them, if you guys can remember, what this it looks like in the book of Mark, is Jesus is teaching in a house. There's so many people in the house that there's no room. And all the people are crowding at the door, and then these guys go up on top of a roof, and they open up the roof, and then they start to lower this guy down, all four of them, with ropes on a mat. And in the text, it says that Jesus looked up. And the reason that the paralyzed man got to walk was because when he looked up, he loved their faith, so their faith blessed him. So it's a great little inner sermon of your faith around the people that are hurting can really affect the people that are hurting, right? God can bless your faith for other people. So he says, your faith. I love the fact that you guys believed enough to tear the roof open, drop him down. So everybody sees this man, and he says, your faith. Wow. Dang, dude. Because of your faith, he is healed. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the man, take heart, your sins are forgiven. At this, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, this fellow is blaspheming. I mean, essentially, he's saying, you're forgiven sins, only God can forgive sins. Knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Jesus says, which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. So he said to the paralyzed man, get up, take your mat, and go home. And this is the beginning of influence. The man got up and went home. I just want you to just stop for a second. Jesus is walking around, he's teaching. A man is paralyzed, and he, through the power of his relationship with God and being God in the flesh, has a paralyzed man that everybody knows can't walk. And the man gets up and walks home. And I just want you to just, for a second, think about what that was like when he walked home. I mean, he didn't walk out of there. He was carried out of there. Assisted living for his entire life. And then he just comes walking in the door. And because of that investment, you see lots of people run towards Jesus and go, I want Jesus to impact my life. And I want to impact people's lives the way that Jesus did. It was all because of an investment that Jesus made. It was all because of giving. Hey, you can't walk? Let me help you walk. Wow, what a gift. What a gift. Jesus didn't have to give that gift, but he did it. When the crowd saw this, what it says they were filled with awe, and they praised God who had given such authority to man. And it says this, as Jesus went on from there, this is it. As Jesus went on from there, paralyzed man, he starts to walk. Jesus goes on from there. It says he saw a man named Matthew. Now, Jesus just raised this guy that can't walk, and he's a rabbi. So he says, I'm going to leverage my influence. These people believe in me. Everyone's like praising God, and everything's happening. There's a bubble. I gave, and they're going, this is working. And then he goes along, and he sees someone, and he says, hey, I will invest in you too. That's what Jesus says. He says, if you want, I will invest in you. I will give something to you. He says, follow me, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. Now, when he said, follow me, he's saying, if you want, I will invest in you. If you want, I will give you something. Do you understand? He's not saying, hey, you come and follow me, and I'm going to get a lot out of you. I'm going to get a lot out of you, Matthew. This is Matthew. This is a guy that doesn't deserve to follow Jesus. This is a guy that shouldn't be one of the people. There's all these other kids that barely made the cut. You know what I mean? Like, you got to find one of those guys, right? The Tom Bradys of the world. Didn't barely get drafted. I got to go find that guy. At least he's got some chops, right? We could turn him, make a hero out of the zero. No. He goes to the gutter and says, I'm going to invest in you. I'm not calling you, Matthew, to get something from you. No. I'm going to give something to you. I'm going to invest in you. And in the other passages of Scripture, he says this. He says to Matthew, he says the same thing. He says, come and follow me, and I'll make you a fisher of men. Just look at that a little bit closer. He says, I will make you. I will make you. That is the same thing as saying, I'm going to pour out everything I have into your life. This is an opportunity for you to be a cup and for me to fill it up. Influence. Investment. Hey, Matthew, I know you're a tax collector. I know you collect all this money. You see it flow. You understand it. I would like to make an investment in your life. I would like to give you something. I'm going to give you everything I can so that you could become the greatest influencer that there ever was. Come on. Do you want to be a part of this? Matthew gets up and follows him. You see, the whole path of Jesus is to come into the world, go into our territory, and invest in us so that we can then turn out and go and do something. So as a disciple maker, you have to make investments in people. You have to be thinking, I'm going to pour into people. And what happens is when you start to pour into people, I want you to think of it like a piggy bank. You are making a deposit in their life. You see, we've talked about this before. When you are talking about people, there's deposits and withdrawals. When you are a disciple maker, it's not your job to just get people to do certain things. A disciple maker invests in people so that he can help them make the right decisions. He constantly puts something in so that person feels like this person fills me up. And I might listen to what he says. You see, with withdrawals, when you think of discipleship as withdrawals, it means that you look at the people in your group or you look at the people around you and you think, how can I get them to do certain things? How can I get them to follow me? How can I get them to give something to me? How can I get them to become my entourage? How can I get them to do what I want? That is not a disciple maker. A disciple maker says, I'm going to give to them. I'm going to input into them all the time. If you are thinking about withdrawals, what you have in your mind is this idea of control. Withdrawals means that you want to control. A great Christian disciple maker is not in the game to control everybody's behavior. That is not what it is. It is not our job to set up the rules, to teach, to have the parameters, and then be the judge and jury for everyone's behavior. It is our job to give, invest in people. And when you pour into their lives, what you will see is they will look and they will go, oh, look what I have here. Not control them. I mean, as a spiritual leader, you can manipulate this all the time. You are going to be a small group leader. I mean, Carmen and I started talking this week. We're starting to put names on the board of who we think is ready to lead, who's ready to apprentice. We're ready to start having conversations. I mean, this is not a joke. And your job is not to see who can get everyone to act a certain way and behave a certain way. We're looking at you going, who is going to take the time and make the deposits? Who's the one that doesn't care about just behavior, but actually cares about people's lives? And so when you have people that are all about withdrawals, they're all about control. What you're just looking at is behavior modification. And I've talked about this 1,000 times. As a pastor, it is not my job to get everyone to act right. I do not get up on Sunday morning or do this or go to my small group and think, I got to just what can I get from them and what can I get them to do? How can I get them to represent me and represent our church? No. I'm thinking, what can I give to them? What can I invest in them to make them a great disciple? Deposits is totally different. Deposits is, and I know I've been talking more about that and controlling. I mean, we could go into lots of pictures of abuse and pastors just trying to get things from people. You know, you look at people that, it's all about money, and I'm going to get your money, and the manipulation that can take place. I'm going to just get control out of people. And once people start to behave, you think that's healthy. It's just not the right attitude. That's just not Jesus. Jesus is just the kind of person that's like, I'm here to give, I'm going to invest, and hopefully that investment is currency, and that currency will turn into discipleship. That's what Jesus did. And so a deposit is something different. It's empowerment. I mean, just think about Matthew for a second. Hey, you're going to be somebody because I'm going to give you everything I've got. I believe in you. I'm going to empower you. I'm going to fill you up so that you can go out. For me, this is something that I learned. This is something that I believe the person that discipled me, Steve Gardner, did. He empowered me. He didn't ever tell me what to do. He didn't ever challenge my behavior. He didn't just want to control me. I remember when I was, this is horrible, but I played high school football, and I know you guys know that. One day in practice, I got in a fight, and me and this guy got in this fist fight, and it was it's the dumbest thing in the world to get in a fist fight when you all have like football stuff on. You're like breaking your hand on their face and just grabbing each other's face masks. And me and this guy got in this big fight, and I got so mad. I was so mad, and I was like a frustrated kid. My house was kind of a mess, and I took off my helmet, I slammed it on the ground, and I went into the locker room. And this man, Steve Gardner, who was my Young Life leader, he was a coach. And so he left the field and came into the locker room with me. And I'm sitting in there, and I'm upset. And I'm like, that guy, he just kept cutting my knees out, and he's just trying to pick a fight. And I was so mad. And I remember Steve sitting there. And Steve didn't say anything. He just sat down next to me and goes, I know. And it was amazing. He was with me. He was around me. A couple weeks later, I was just frustrated at home. I was just upset with my dad. And he came and took me out to lunch. We were sitting in his car. I remember outside of Kilbourne. We're sitting in his car, and I was just venting about my life and frustration. And he didn't say anything. But he was there for me. He just sat with me. He was around, he was present, he was available. And he gained access to me because of his investment. He was around, and he didn't teach me. He just listened to me and helped me and invested in me. And here I'm going to break it down for you because I believe that an influence in investment, it happens a little bit differently than we see a lot of churches and a lot of people thinking it through. What were we going to say? Oh, come on. That's an easy question. No one won. No one's a winner, man, when you fight. It's not okay. I did not. Absolutely, I lost, and so did he. We were all losers. You have to make investments in people. Investments of time, but I'm going to give you just the 4 things that I believe really display investment in people and how that is currency and it gains influence in your life. The first one I've already started talking about. I'm jumping forward a little bit. The first way to invest in people is to listen. It's not to teach. It's to listen. When Steve listened to me, he was investing in me. You know that? You think I got to tell them something, I better give them the answer. No. Isn't it amazing? I have sat with people in counseling. They'll call me up. I'm not a counselor. I mean, man, I am not a counselor. I do some premarital counseling. Woo! I am not a counselor for people that are really need to go through those steps. But people will call me up because, they want to talk, right? And the pastor, and I'm going to talk to the pastor. A couple of weeks ago, I met with someone that's just struggling, so difficult in their family. And I sat in my office for an hour and a half and listened. I didn't say hardly anything. And when it was done, this person goes, "Can I just write a check to the church?" And I was like, "Yes, you can." And this person goes, "This was so helpful." I didn't say anything. I just listened. You know what I did by listening? I invested in her. And by investing in her, I gained influence in her. Listening gave me currency. If I wanted to, in that moment, I could have said, "I'm so glad that you told me those things. Here's the 3 things you need to go do." I could have done that, and she would have done them. She would have gone. I actually did tell her one thing to do, and she was like, "I'm going to do that." All because I listened. You see, discipleship is relationship lived out. It's what happens when you're with people, and what you need to be thinking is, I've got to give to them, and that means that you're going to listen to them. And when you listen to them, you're investing in them. You are going to be able to steer their lives because you were the great listener. They're going to go, that person listens to me. They listen to everything I say. And if you become the listener, what you will be is the receiver of the questions. I mean, you will become the guy that doesn't say much, but when they say it matters, and people go, "I want to know what that person has to say." People who are wise listen. People who want to influence people listen. They don't give answers. Another thing that people do to invest is cast vision. You see, I don't believe that you need to teach. I don't believe you need to tell them. I don't believe you need to give them the 3-step program. I think if you get to a point in people's lives and if they're really struggling and they need some practical things and you've listened a bunch and you can get to that point where they ask you, "I need to know what to do, what's next? I need to know what to do next." You can do that, but you know what is way better than giving people the 3 steps or the 5 steps when they're struggling? Is to cast vision. To look at their lives and go, "You know what? I know this is hard right now, but I think you're going to be the best student. I can just tell that wherever you go to college, you're going to be amazing. I can just see you making friends and having a life and getting a degree." You see, people that influence others, they invest by seeing something for them that's beautiful. Great visionary leaders look at people and go, "You are going to become a fisher of men. I can see it. I can see this. You're fishing right now. You're going to become a fisher of men. You're tax collecting. You're going to do something that you're not going to take from people. You're going to give to people. You are going to impact people's lives." And I just had this done for me. I just had a moment in my life where I didn't know where to go to school, and I was freaking out. And I remember sitting down with Steve, and he was the guy that was in my life. He had the biggest influence because he made the biggest investment. He listened to me, and he constantly would cast vision for me. Believe it or not, I was the kid that I needed to be reminded that I had something to offer the world. I came from a broken home. I was very depressed. I was very frustrated, and what am I going to do with my life? And I remember Steve just constantly going, "Joel, you're going to do great. Joel, you're going to do great." I remember, should I go to Bible college or should I go to Ohio State? And he said, "Joel, if you go to Ohio State, I think you're going to do great. I think you're going to grow. I think you're going to learn the Bible, and you're going to love people, and I can just see you going to Ohio State and doing great there." And he just gave me a picture of what it was going to be like if I went there. I said, but I think I got to go learn the Bible. He goes, I think if you go study the Bible, that you're going to grow and it's going to be the same. You're going to love people. You're going to learn the Bible. You're going to become a person of influence. I can see it. I can see it. And he just cast vision for me. He didn't feel like it was his job to solve all my problems. He felt like, I'm going to show this person what they could be and who they could become. I believe that great disciplers do that for people. I believe that you take the mental, the time, the energy, the heart, and you look at people and you find what's great about them and you paint a picture for them and you say, you could go and do this. I could see this thing happening in your job. If you just stick it out, I could see it being great. You can cast vision for people. Steve Gardner said this, discipleship is friendship with a vision. Friendship with a vision. You see, if you are going to lead people, you have to invest in them. And I don't suggest giving them all the answers. I suggest praying for a picture that you can paint for them and saying, it's just going to be great. Can't you see this? Can't you see this picture? It inspires people. It inspired me. The next thing is that you have to model. You have to model it. Investing in people means modeling it. You cannot, I've talked about this, you can't lead what you don't live. If you're going to really make an investment in people's lives, you have to live your life a certain way, and people are going to see it, and when they see it, they're going to go, oh, okay, I get it. I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to do it that way. I'm going to live this thing out because I'm seeing it lived out. When you live out your faith in front of people, you are actually making an investment in the people that can see what you're doing. You absolutely are. And the other thing is, I'm going to kind of end with this, is kindness. Kindness. If you're going to truly make an impact in people's lives, you're going to listen to them, you're going to cast vision for them, you're going to model your faith for them, and you are going to constantly be kind to them. You see, kindness is what changes people, not judgment. You see, if you're going to be a disciple maker, then that means you're going to be working with people. And when you work with people, you're going to be working with messy people. People that have big-time problems, people that are going to screw up, people that are going to fail all the time. And if you are the kind of person that's all about behavior, then nobody is ever going to be good enough to become the follower of Jesus under you and your leadership. Because every person that you decide to invest in is going to fail miserably. And then when they fail, you have the opportunity to either judge them, to belittle them, to berate them, to make them feel unworthy, or show them tender love and mercy and kindness. And scriptures teach that kindness is more powerful than judgment. And as a disciple maker, you have to be a bearer of kindness constantly. This is what it says in Romans. It says, or do you show contempt for the riches of his kindness? Basically, it's talking about how if you receive kindness from God and you don't give it to other people, you're a mess. You don't understand this thing, because we're supposed to receive the kindness from God, understanding our brokenness, understand that we deserve judgment, but we receive kindness instead. And then whenever that comes into our life and someone deserves judgment, we give them kindness instead. That's what Paul is saying here. Or do you show contempt for his riches and kindness, forbearance and patience, not realizing that God's kindness is intended to lead you to repentance? Scriptures teach that kindness changes people's lives. Okay, so you have this picture of Jesus who calls these disciples, who makes 2.5 years of an investment of time and modeling it, right, and listening to them and asking them questions and caring for them. And then they get to the end, right? They get to the end of this thing, and Jesus starts to tell them that he's going to give them this sign. He talks about the sign of Jonah. Jonah went into the belly of a whale or a fish for 3 days, and then he came out and says, that's the same thing's going to happen to me. I'm going to go into the earth. They're going to come out. They're going to destroy this temple. And He basically just says, I'm going to have to go be lifted up, I'm going to be crucified. And then they're all going, what the heck? This is crazy, right? This is crazy. And he goes, and after 2 years of investment, you need to get this, after 2.5 years of investment into their lives, when he gets arrested, Jesus gets arrested the night before he gets crucified, the disciples all run away. They run away. And then there's an amazing story of Peter, who Peter then goes and kind of is on the outskirts of where Jesus is being tried, and a bunch of people see him and say, you were one of the guys that hung out with Jesus. And then Jesus denies Christ 3 times. Remember this story? Jesus denied him. Jesus actually, Peter denied Jesus. Jesus told Peter that he would, right? And then after Jesus raises from the dead, after he's been crucified and the disciples have scattered and they go back to work, you read in the book of John that Jesus went back to Peter and he goes on the beach, and there's this amazing story of Jesus, and Peter jumps out of the boat, right, and comes back and he says, I want to restore you to continue to go and do what I told you to do. Now, at that moment, Jesus had every right to say, like, Peter, you screwed up. You turned your back on me. You do not deserve to be my follower. Do not. Think about it. If it was me, I would have been at the beach going like, don't ever tell anyone, Peter. Here, this is our last meal together. Don't ever tell anybody that you were the guy that spent 3 years with me. Don't ever tell anybody that you were around when I walked on water. Don't tell any. I do not want your name to be associated with my name. That's judgment. But you are going to pour into people's lives. They're going to screw up after you've invested tremendously. And then you're going to be at that fork in the road. You're going to be at that beach moment with people, and you are going to get to either give them kindness or judgment. And I promise you that kindness will lead to change. The word repentance in this passage, it means a change of mind, a change of direction. For Peter, that was the moment. Now, a lot of people know, and I could tell this story if he was here, but Ryan Donovan is he's my guy. And what I mean by that is I have invested in Ryan since 2005 now. And you know what that means? It means I haven't asked Ryan for anything. I just have poured into his life. I'll tell you a quick story about investment and how it leads to influence. And this is just something that God did for me. And you got to understand, the only reason that I did this with Ryan is because it was done for me. That's the only reason. So this is not like me boasting. This is something that I learned, that was taught to me, and therefore I did it for Ryan. Ryan, when I was a youth director at a Quest Community Church, he was on the student team, and I had him leading a small group with high school kids, and I had him helping with AV. Go figure. And he does all the same crap now. But Ryan was in a drinking battle. He was, just out of high school, and he would drink, and we had a pretty basic understanding that if you were drinking as a leader, that you would lose that position, that influence. So the night of the Texas game, if you can remember Ohio State, Texas, there was 2 years of that. The first year, Ohio State, Texas game, Ryan was at a party, and Ryan got drunk, and Ryan fell down, and Ryan scraped his face all the way down the side of his face. So like the next morning, he comes into church, and he was supposed to run AV that day. He was just running like lights or something, and he walks in, and I'm like, what's on your face? And it was like the decisions were like stuck to his face. And he's like, dude, I had a bad night. And I'm like, it looks like it. And so that week, I said, Ryan, man, I said, you can't be a small group leader and have that happen. I got to ask you to step down. Now, I don't want you to leave. I want you to be around. I want you to be here, but you just can't be in that position. And Ryan's like, I know. And Ryan hung out for another 6 months. And then one day we're in the car, we're on 161, and I said, Ryan, I got to tell you something. I said, if you don't go to college and get a freaking degree, then you are going to be the 32-year-old guy that drinks too much at the Ohio State games and runs sound on Sunday morning. And he's like, whoa. And because our relationship didn't end after he messed up, he was still around. He was still with me. He was still part of the team. He just wasn't a leader on the team. Ryan listened to what I said, and he went to college. Then Ryan comes back, and after a series of events, Ryan gets on. This church had started when he came back, and Ryan comes on the team. And since Ryan has started, he's had 2 different incidences where his job was in question. And we had to sit down with him. And a couple years ago, I said, Ryan, you can't behave that way and be a leader at our church. And one time we were having a meeting with Ryan, and he did something, and he's fine. It wasn't like this totally smoking gun, like don't freak out that like we have a guy. This guy he's just a superstar at our church. But he made some dumb decisions. And he knew that we had asked people to step down, and we had asked people to stop working here for not the same decisions, but some similar decisions, and we were in this really weird gray area. And I said, Ryan, you got to go so we can talk about you behind your back. And so he goes, hold on. And with tears in his eyes, he said, I know, I shouldn't have done this, And he went away, and he came back, and he just fully expected that it was going to be over. And we looked at him, and we just said, Ryan, we believe in you. We believe in you. We've invested in you, and we want you to step up and be the leader that God has called you to be. And ever since that moment, Ryan has elevated at our church. I mean, just now he's the co-student director. He is just a different person. He's made some personal decisions that you would just go, wow, this guy's a leader. Now, I could have, at that moment, said to Ryan, you're done. You messed up too much. And I'm not saying there's not time for that, and we've done that. But it wasn't right. It was time for kindness. And the kindness led to the change. That is what you are supposed to do as an influencer. You invest in people's lives. You give. That gains currency. They're going to get to that moment where they need you. They're going to come and ask you what they should do because you've invested in them. Do you understand? It is so much better to help people in the trajectory of their life when they come and ask you for your opinion. You only gain that type of access by listening, by loving, by caring, by investing. And then at some point, you get to cash out, and you affect the trajectory of people's lives. The story of Jesus is he gave them life. He died for them. Then they died for him. You see, it's not you start out. Jesus did not start out his ministry saying, go and die for me. He started out saying, I'm going to give you everything. And then he died on the cross for them. And because he invested 3 years and then he gave his life, they turned around and became the influencers that changed the world. Those men are the reason that we are sitting in this room today. And it all happened because of investment. Jesus didn't make them die. All of the disciples, the 12 disciples, history teaches that they gave their lives, they died for Christ. It was all because of investment. So, discipleship is influence. Influence comes from investment. Your job is to find people to invest in. And those 4 things I showed you are the best way to invest. Let me pray for us, and then we're going to have a little bit of fun, and then Carmen's going to talk, and then we're going to have a little bit of question and answer. Let me pray. God, thank you so much. I pray that you would give everyone in this room the fortitude, the vision to invest, the desire to give, the desire to model and to cast vision and to be a great listener and to show kindness. Help them to completely rethink their take on changing people's lives and helping people follow you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Thanks for coming to my waiting group. I appreciate it.
Small group.
Thanks for coming to my small group. I appreciate it. Normally the guys should be showing up anytime. I think they're here. That was Joel yelling. So when they get, there they are now. Guys, come on in. What's going on? What's happening?
Oh my gosh, I love those.
What are you guys all riding the same car? All right, so here's the deal. People aren't going to show up all at the same time. That's a rarity. They're either going to be late or they're going to be early. It's not a big deal as long as it's not a huge problem. So just have fun with it.
Oh, yeah.
Did you all ride the same car? Yeah.
That is awesome.
That's funny.
That's a good look on you. That is a real good look.
Normally, what we would do is we would hang out for a little bit and chit chat, maybe eat, maybe somebody will bring food. So for this part, I'm not going to watch you do small talk. We'll fast forward here. So normally, we'll chit chat, maybe play games. A lot of times we play a game. Looks like today we're playing charades. Daniel did it. So we'll just go until they stop, until they sit back down there. We'll pause that. So yeah, it's a little fun. Just play games, hang out with your friends, and then you get back into it.
It was pizza, guys.
I know, it's awesome.
Pizza. Making pizza.
So good.
Well, listen. So this week,
What was he doing?
we're getting back into John 3 this week.
John 3:16.
Scared me. So John 3:16, obviously, probably the verse that's got, or the chapter that's got the most popular verse in the Bible. The thing is, there's a story around John 3:16, around that verse, and it's an interesting story that a lot of times we totally zip right over because of that verse itself. So, Maddie, would you mind if you just start in John 3:1 and just go for a bit?
Sure. Now, there was a Pharisee, a man named Nicodemus, who was a member of the Jewish ruling council. He came to Jesus at night and said, "Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God, for no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him." Jesus replied, "Very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they are born again." "How can someone be born when they are old?" Nicodemus asked. "Sure."
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
I guess I have trouble with the born again part because, I remember my parents would say that when I was growing up. They would talk about born again, but I'm born. I'm not gonna get born again.
Right.
I feel like that's a term from the 80s, and that it's not real. People don't get born again. That's I just don't believe in it. I just think it's wrong.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay, so here's the deal. Sometimes there's going to be bad theology in your small group. And that's not a bad thing. You're going to have people at different points in their walk with Christ. So we got some bad theology here. And sometimes, a lot of times, the guy that has bad theology also is the guy wearing the tightest t-shirt in the room. That's okay. This is a point to a chance to facilitate and lead the group to answer and find the answers to these questions. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Yeah, I got it. Does anybody have anything to say on that? I mean, that's.
Yeah, I do. Joel, I hear what you're saying, but we have to believe that the Bible is the inspired word of God, and that makes it timeless. So it doesn't matter if it's not a cool thing to say in the culture. It doesn't make it any less true. If anything, it just shows that our world is even farther from the truth.
I understand, but I don't know. I'm just not there. I just don't believe in being born again. I feel like it's misleading, or it's hard to imagine that being true.
Right.
Okay.
Joel, I totally get that, man. A couple years ago, I struggled with that same stuff myself. Let's go have coffee one day this week and talk about it.
All right.
Is that cool?
Yeah, cool.
In verse 10, Jesus tells Nicodemus that he is Israel's teacher. What does that even mean?
Verse 10.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody know the answer to that? I know the answer to that. I know the answer, but I don't want to answer all the questions. So I open it up for conversation, find out if anybody else knows the answer. Just like I said, just keeps that conversation going because I'm not teaching, I'm facilitating.
Well, it says in verse 1 that he was a Pharisee. So he was a religious leader. The religious leaders at that time didn't like what Jesus was teaching.
Oh, okay, I missed that in verse 1. So what happened to Nicodemus? I mean, the last thing we hear is that he is being told about being born again. What happened next?
That is a good question. I just mentioned at the top of this that we missed a story because of that verse. I have no idea. Does anybody have any idea? So you're not going to have all the answers to every question. That's fine. It's not a problem. Let me show you how to handle that. So yeah, nobody knows. I mean, I'm sure we can find. You know what? I'll find out this week. I'll talk to some people and find out. And
Cool.
If any of you guys find out, maybe you can shoot out an email or something.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Maddie, if you go to just jump down to 3:16. We could all say it, but
Okay.
yeah.
For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life.
That is a great verse, right?
Great.
So good.
Yep.
Yeah. Always. God so loved the world.
Yeah. Well,
I'm gonna go pee real quick.
Okay, all right. So I screwed up. Anybody know what I did there? Why I screwed up or how I screwed up? It's not a big screw up. Anybody know what I did wrong though? Yeah. Dead air. We're gonna get to that here in a minute. It's a little further down the script. Actually, I asked a yes or no question. There's better ways to handle that. Let me rewind this. There we go. Okay. So check out how I handle this now.
shall not perish but have eternal life.
Yeah, that's an awesome verse. Why do you guys think that's such a powerful verse, or why it's so well known?
I think it's the gospel in one verse.
Yeah.
Super simple. God loves you. He sent His Son. I've got eternal life.
Yeah.
And you know, it's everywhere. You can't watch a live sporting event or a football game without seeing someone who's holding up a sign that says John 3:16.
That's a good point. It's like the guy, some of you may be too young, the guy with the rainbow wig in the end zone all the time. Yo, what do you think about it?
Oh, I really, really have to pee. Can I
Yeah, go. You don't have to act okay.
Bye.
Sometimes you're going to have people who give you way too much information. Best just to let it go. Not sure why he felt necessary to point that out.
Ew! Oh my gosh!
Just get up and go, right?
Yeah, right.
That's a little lower.
Just back to this John 3:16 thing. I played football in high school. Yeah, I did. And we had like an amazing year. Like I was one of the best players on the team.
Yeah.
And we had an amazing year.
That's
and,
good.
But we were playing Johnstown, and Johnstown was like, they were like the best team. And so I was scared, man. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I mean, I had so much talent and I had so much ability, but I was scared. I didn't know what I was gonna do.
You also have the guys that like to go on and on about themselves. They'll kind of rabbit trail off to somewhere you don't want to go. Best just to try and wrap that off up as politely and quickly as possible. There's ways to do it. We'll just play this out and see what happens.
And I just had the best game of my night because when I got out there in the first quarter, there was this sign. Someone had John 3:16, and I was like, oh yeah, that's power. And you know what? I had the best game ever. I rushed for 212 yards. I did it all by myself.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
congratulations.
it was.
I'm
it was
assuming
powerful.
I'm assuming
It
you
was
won the
awesome.
game. You won it. You won the game.
No. We lost.
awkward silence. Sometimes you're going to have silence, and that's people reflecting on maybe a verse they just read or something you just taught or whatever. There's also going to be awkward times when you don't know your curriculum well. I probably should have known my curriculum a little better there. But yeah, try and avoid the rough, awkward moments. They can be awkward. So that's pretty much it. So next week, let's do this. So next week we will we're gonna John 4. So sometime this week, just read through John 4, and if you read anything interesting through the week, just send out an email, and yeah, we'll just keep in touch.
One more thing, can I say something before
Yeah.
we go? So I just want to say what an awesome guy you are, and
Thanks.
how funny you are. It's just,
Yeah.
thanks for opening your house.
No,
Thank you.
okay. This is ridiculous, guys. Listen, Dave wrote this whole entire script, so the next couple minutes he gets a lot of compliments written in. So I'm just gonna help you out on me. I'll just fast forward for a little bit. Let's try this. Nah, that should be good.
Funny, good looking.
Are you
Well, thank
kidding
you.
me? Fast forward. Just give it a second. Go.
For he's a jolly fellow,
Ridiculous. Okay, go.
which nobody can deny. All right, I appreciate it. That's very nice of you.
You're awesome, man.
Thank you.
No, just bring it in, man.
All right.
Bring it in.
All right. You're awesome. See you guys. So that's it. Thanks for hanging out in my small group. Sorry that you had to sit through all that at the end. It's embarrassing. But then, no, sell it, Carmen. Leave. You don't like to leave it. Oh, that's it. Thanks, guys. Joel's going to talk to you. No.
All right, guys, we're going to unpack a little bit, I'm good, of what we just saw. David doesn't do a great job at that. So this is the group section. Get your groups page out if you haven't done so already. So if you couldn't tell by that little skit, your job as a leader, you guys, it's to lead by facilitation, okay? And here's what that means. Like, according to Merriam-Webster, a good friend, a facilitator's job is to manage the process of communicating and decision-making, all right? So really simply put, facilitation is to make easier, all right? Facilitation is to make easier. In a group context, I like to think of a group as a fire, okay? And I'm going to be honest, I haven't built many fires, if that doesn't surprise you. But I've been to bonfires, right? And so there's a good fire, right? There's fires that are too low and they're cold. And then there's fires that the flame is up here and you don't want to go near it because you're going to get burned, right? And then there's the just right fire. And so as a leader, your job is to keep it in that range, okay? To keep a good fire going. Not too low, not too high, just right. Your main job in a group context is to make it easier for people to engage, for people to talk, right? And to be real. And to hopefully sometimes arrive at a conclusion or an answer or a decision. And as the leader, you set the tone for this. Your group needs to be a safe place where people know they can be real. And you create that a lot by what we've talked about these past 6 weeks. But you also do this by how you facilitate and how you lead the conversation. All right? So facilitation, simply, just to make it easier. And when we say that, we mean to make it easier for people to engage, to make it easier for people to talk. Sometimes you're going to have to be detangling things that went off. Sometimes you're going to have to be straightening things out. Sometimes you're going to have to be assisting or improving something, right? Sometimes someone's going to say something and it needs to be simplified. Again, think of it as a fire. We have group settings where people say things and it's way out in left field and the flames just went way up here. And as a facilitator, you've got to get it back down, right? And then there's moments I've been in groups where someone kind of shares something really, really vulnerable, and it gets really awkward. The fire is embers. There's not much going on. And you have to bring it alive again. And so when you are making it easier, it means that you are helping things run more smoothly and more effectively. And for groups, like I said, you've got to get people to talk, to have dialogue, to speak up. And as a facilitator, you've got to know how to create discussion, how to get the fire going, so to speak. So the goal in your group is not teaching. Okay, write that down. It is not to teach. If we wanted teachers, you guys, we would have just went out and hired a bunch of Bible scholars to do this. All right? If we wanted teachers, we would have had a bunch of classes that people would just sign up for. So sometimes as a leader, though, it's hard to not want to teach because sometimes that feels right, but it's not the main goal. And a good facilitator, they have times that they teach, but this isn't at the forefront of their group. We want you to come alongside the people in your group and say, hey, I'm here to help you, right? I'm here to help you figure this out. I want to do this together. I think that, it's always easier to teach than it is to facilitate, and it takes skill. I remember my leader growing up in high school, she mastered this because she was older than us. So I know a lot of the times we would be talking and she's going, ooh, I just want to teach at them right now, But she didn't do that. She literally came alongside of us. She made us feel like she knew exactly what we were going through. And why we felt that way, and then how to overcome it. And, if you lead middle school or high school groups, if that's something you want to do, kids need, I said this in my talk last month, kids need other voices saying the same things their parents are saying. When I look back at my leader, Gretchen, she literally was telling me the exact same things my parents were saying. They were coming to the same conclusion. But because of the way she said it, the way she facilitated those groups, I really listened to her. And what she said to me was a lot more valuable than what my parents said sometimes. So we're not saying that there's not a time to teach. Hear me out. There is a time to teach in your group, but the art of a good facilitator is to navigate and guide the group without teaching all of the time and letting that drive your group. The goal also is not to be a referee. Have you ever been in groups like this? It's not to call out people, right? When they go off or to criticize. Remember, we want leaders to make it easy and to help people feel comfortable opening up, sharing, and being real. And you as the leader, you as the facilitator, you guys, you set the tone for people in your group and the way they communicate. You do. You set the tone for what they feel like they can say and what they feel like they cannot say. Last night, Joel sent me this text. He said, we cannot change people by forcing our views onto them, but we can engage in open conversation, right? And as a facilitator, that's what you're doing. You're engaging people. You're creating conversation. And hopefully through this, right, this is the goal, that people do experience life change, that they're enlightened, they have kind of an aha moment, and they're changed by God. That's definitely our hope with that. A good way to keep this in check is by this rule of thumb, all right? A leader who facilitates well should only be talking about, write this number down, 20% of the time. Whoa, that's not a lot. A good leader, a good facilitator should only be talking about 20% of the time. So this means that you as a leader, as Joel said, you become a really, really good listener. All right? You become a really, really good listener. One of the biggest pieces to facilitating well is by artfully asking questions. All right? It's by living in the question world. You guys need to become like masters of question asking. And so we're going to go over 3 quick tips to asking good questions. Remember, it's the best way to create conversational environments is by asking good questions. The first one is to ask open-ended questions, not those that can be answered with a, does anyone know? Right, a yes or no. Right? Yes or no conversations, they shut a conversation down like that. Right? It's over. Oftentimes when questions are this, it's okay to ask these sometimes. I think in my group, when I hear people asking these questions, I piggyback with usually two words, why or what. So if someone says, yes, I say, well, why do you feel that way? What makes you think that, right? Why did you answer yes to that? Another one, number 2, is ask questions that evoke feelings, make people think, and lead to personal examples. When you get good at asking these types of questions, you guys, your group time can become really real, right? Very, very quickly. And this is so helpful. If you live in an abstract world in your group where you're just talking about these concepts, it's going to be really, really hard for people to actually live out the stuff you're talking about. So sometimes when you start asking questions that evoke feelings, when someone can say, ooh, I had a situation like that, it's going to cause people to be more real and hopefully then to apply what you're talking about. The third one, ask questions that have more than one right answer. Ask questions that have more than one right answer. Do this so a lot of people can share, right? And this is enlightening. We'll do this in our group, and I'll gain an entirely new perspective because of what someone else said. So do that. Ask questions that have more than one right answer. Sometimes you're going to have people in your group that are going to ask you directly a question. They're going to look you in their eyes. They're going to ask you a question. And sometimes as the leader, you're going to know the answer, all right? And so you're going to want to spout it off, but a great facilitator will redirect questions back to the group. Redirect the question back to the group. So when you redirect the question, you say, hey, what do you guys think of this? How would you guys answer that question that she just asked? Throw it back to the group and let the group answer questions. All right, let the group answer the questions. Think of this as like a math tutor, right? If I'm a math tutor, I'm going to sit down next to Billy, and I'm not just going to tell him the answer. Billy, no, it's 42. Do you get that? It's 42. No. I'm going to graciously help him and aid him and let him arrive to the answer on his own. So same way in your group. Let others arrive at the conclusion. And when someone answers the right way, you can speak up, right? You can say, you know what? Yeah, I agree with what he just said. Yeah, that's my take on it too. That's a really good way of looking at it. Throw your weight at the discovery of someone else's conclusion or answer and not just your own. And sometimes, as David said, sometimes an awkward silence is okay. Has anyone had that in their groups? I actually try to avoid it at all times. I need to get better about this. I'm a silence filler. So much so I wasn't planning on saying this, but since he's in the room, I set my brother up on a blind date. And it was a terrible idea because we went with 2 other couples, and my brother and his now girlfriend, so it worked out, they're both really, really quiet. And so literally the entire night, I was making conversation. I was like, so tell about your job, like what do you do every day? Like I'm surprised they made it because it was terrible. But silences sometimes are okay in your group, right? It gives people a minute to think. And then you never know, someone may speak up. Here's your last fill in the blank, all right? Not knowing is okay. Not knowing is okay. A lot of times, you guys, we think that when we say, I don't know, it's going to undermine our leadership, right? But pretending to know all the answers, it leads to over-promising and under-delivering. Because sometimes, we really just don't know. And that's okay. You don't always have to know. And you know what? You're going to say something in your group, and I'm going to be that person who, goes home and Googles it, and then I find out you're wrong. So it's okay to not always have the right answer and to have an answer. Just don't act like you do. It's so important as a leader to say, I don't know, because I don't know, it communicates that you're humble, right? It communicates, it says, hey, I'm willing to learn. Hey, I need your guys' help too. Help me out. Be a humble leader. Great facilitators, this is not in your notes, but the 3 words I want you guys to write down, okay? Great facilitators are humble. That's the first one. So they approach conversations within their groups as, fellow journeyers. They're friends. We're all in this together. They're not the ones just handing off truth. Humble leaders, they sit on the same side of the table as their group members, right? And a side note, actually be careful about how you set up the room. You're not teaching them. Set it up in a conversational sense where you're just a part of it. Humble leaders and facilitators, they know that they're in needs of God's love and his grace too. They say, hey, I'm one of you. We're all trying to figure this out together. The second word, great facilitators are teachable. All right, they're teachable. Being teachable, it's an attitude. It's a spirit that says, you know what, I'm going to constantly be learning about myself, constantly be learning about others and culture so that God can use me in new and in different ways. Teachable leaders, they always pursue what it means to create open and conversational environments for people to experience community. The third word, last word, is curious. All right, curious. Being curious is all about engagement, right? Curious leaders, they don't teach, they ask questions. They're proactive in learning about the members of their group so that they can better lead them. They're curious about where they are personally, where they are spiritually, right? Where they are emotionally, so that they can encourage them to take steps in their relationship with Christ. And curious leaders, this is important, they don't learn about their group members so they can just change their minds. Okay, that's not the point. It's so they connect with the people, they lead the people towards a deeper relationship with Christ. When you lead this way, when you become a facilitator and not a teacher, it breaks down, you guys, I've seen this happen, it breaks down the barriers of shame and guilt that people come into your group with. It expresses a transparency, it expresses vulnerability that then gives members of your group permission to be, vulnerable and to be transparent. And that's huge. My heart in facilitation, it's that you make it easy, right? Facilitation to make easier. You make it easy for people to be real. To be real. Because you are not going to get anywhere in your group if it's a bunch of people who won't be real with each other. And one last thing. You want to make sure that the rubber hits the road in your group. And what I mean when I say that is that by the end of the night, if you haven't led your group to actually apply what you've been talking about, then you're a group, you're just a group of people leaving maybe a little smarter, maybe, but not with changed lives. So make it real. Create a space where people can be real, where they can be vulnerable, and that's by you leading that way, you leading and being real and vulnerable yourself. It's really cool. I just recently saw this happen in our group. We are a full group, but my husband has a friend, and he and then his fiance joined our group. And they've only been 2 times, but they came this last Tuesday, and you guys, they are the best people in the entire world. They don't have a relationship with God at all. They are just not there. They live together, they're sleeping together, and it makes my heart so happy that they are in our group. And so they came to our group, they've come twice, and they love it. And we were all, my group is a bunch of churched people. It just is. And so I didn't know how it was going to go. I'm like, oh my gosh, are we going to freak them out? And they have loved our group. And Michael, the guy, he's kind of a guy's guy. He doesn't say a whole lot anyways, but this past week, we had a great discussion. We're talking about forgiveness. We're reading this book. And then we started talking about, hey, does anyone need prayer? What's going on in your week? What's going on in your life? And so he's sitting there, and he says, yeah, I've got something. And I'm like, oh boy, what is this going to be? And he starts crying. Okay, remember, 2 weeks. 2 weeks in. He starts crying, and he's telling us about, which you probably watched it on the news, they have really, really good family friends that 9 years ago, their son went missing up in Powell area. And just this past, within a week, they found the car and the son. They were looking, and it was really interesting, in a 3-mile radius. And so they decided after 9 years, they've still been looking. They said, let's expand it 1 mile out. So they started looking into a 4-mile radius, and there's a 9-foot retention pond in a neighborhood, and they found this car. And so he's sitting there, and he's going, I think that I need prayer for this. I don't even know if he knows what prayer is, right? But he is in this group, and because of the way that we are with him and the way it's been facilitated and the way it's been led, he feels like that quick he can get that vulnerable. It was really, really cool. So give people in your group a place that they can actually be real, no matter what stage they're at. All right? Okay, we're going to do a little Q&A. Is that right? So come on up. Anything facilitation related that, any questions? Asking questions, redirecting questions, the weird people in your group. Just kidding. Oh. Anybody got anything? Yeah, go ahead.
How do you reel a conversation back in if you get off topic and everyone's kind of talking about their own thing?
Mm-hmm.
What's your source just to bring that back?
Well, it's interesting because
The question was,
Oh, do you want me to repeat it?
yeah, probably.
The question was basically how to, if you have that person who goes off, right, on a tangent, how do you reel them back in? I have had this happen in a group where it happened so much, and I've read a lot about this. I would suggest, eventually maybe going and having a one-on-one with them and saying, hey, you know what? When we're talking about something and then you always take it somewhere else, it's a little bit distracting. It's hard for us to come back to what we're actually talking about. So could you do a little less of that? I've had that type of conversation. Within the group, I'm sure you would say something else.
No, I would say that. I mean, I think if someone does it that much, then yeah. But there's also a part of, the tension, I think, with that is when you're facilitating, you want people to feel like they can talk.
Yep.
And so then they start to talk, and they're not talking about anything helpful for anybody else, but they are talking. Mm-hmm. And so I think that as a leader, you have to be very aware of what other people are experiencing while that's happening and try to, cut them off graciously. Yep. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. What do you were going to say something, Bill. That's something I might do, if it just keeps going. I know what you're saying, and maybe add to that, and then graciously acknowledge it, and then say, but I think this is really about, and then just bring it back online. Usually people that are doing that lack a level of awareness, and so if you redirect them, they're not going to... I've never seen them take offense. They're just kind of like, blah, 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 like, oh, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Hey, Rebecca, what do you think about that word that we're looking at or whatever? That I don't know.
Yeah.
Reel them back in. Go ahead, Kristen.
What do you do with past group experiences? I already find myself comparing to what it could be from past group experiences that were maybe not so fantastic. If you have people coming in well, I'm going to try this out, but in my last group,
Oh.
well, how do you handle
You mean how?
positive
we try and safeguard our groups from that. So every new group that launches goes through this really, really well done, dialed in curriculum called Starting Well. And it's 8 weeks. And you go through it, and it really sets up the groups with, hey, here's the expectations. Here's what we hope out of you as a participant and you as the leader. There's a time where it takes 2 to 3 weeks, and everyone gets to share their story. And then at the 8-week point, the person in the group has the option to leave and not be a part of the group. And so that curriculum, we've seen it done, and it's hopefully going to safeguard our groups from that. I don't know if that really answers your question.
For a new group.
Yep, for a new group.
Yeah.
So, what she says is like a bad experience. I've always found the conversational piece of the group to be like more important than the teaching.
Right.
And so, like, at some point, I know you gotta keep, stick to the plan, but like, I feel like especially when you start a group, it's better almost to just have conversation than it is to teach. And
Oh, yeah.
then people come to. I mean, where do you draw the line? 'Cause I don't want to cut people off when, even if it's not related. I mean, if it's
Sure.
football, yeah.
Yeah, cut that off.
I mean, when time limit or like what?
I guess that, like,
Turn, you just gotta feel it, I guess.
I guess that when a group is conversing and they're getting to know one another, in a group context, the thing she described, Starting Well, that is trying to facilitate that type of thing.
Yeah.
But also, like, as a leader, I feel like you have to have a feel for what's going well in your group. So if this is going well, if, man, we're connecting with one another, and this is all like gaining trust and respect, and so we're all talking and sharing, this is good. I think
If it's one person, I can see cutting off. But like,
if everyone is,
that tangent gets everybody involved, I mean,
part of it is like like location. Like my group, we'll start out, we all start in the kitchen. And so kitchen is conversation time. I mean, it's just everyone's talking. There's people over here. There's people eating. People whatever, just talking, right? Last night our group we start at 7. We didn't start, and that meant we didn't go into the family room until 8 o'clock. So once you get to that place, I think you could start that way. I would still start that way. I mean, I might not wait that long, but I would let people naturally, and then I would kind of feel the room and go, hey guys, let's go in the family room and get started, and then drive it a little bit. But once you get people talking, that's a good thing. They like each other, they care about each other, they're talking to one another, and then you just, I think as a leader, have to have a defined start time, and that will help the conversation, right? I mean, the start time and saying, hey guys, we're going to get started. We're going to play the video. I have a question to get us going. We're going to play a game to start, whatever it is. That should communicate that change, because you want both of those things. Yeah. You definitely do.
And I think in the beginning, being intentional about maybe doing some outside stuff that's solely just to hang out and get to know each
Relational.
other. Yep, highly relational. I think that helps a lot.
Yeah. What else? Baker.
He said Baker.
Theologically speaking, the Bible has a lot of, since we're finite, there's a lot of subjective things, right, that we can't agree on because we truly don't know the answers to, but we feel one side versus the other. Not talking about those, but the things that are definite, that are not subjective at all. If somebody disagrees with that or brings up a question that disagrees with an objective answer, is it okay to be like, no, that's not right?
That's a great question. I would never, ever say the word no or those words.
Sure.
I mean, I personally, like, so for me, like, again, an answer to a question is truth is truth. It lives regardless of whether you believe it or not or understand it. And so, My goal when someone has that is to make sure that the truth gets presented. And I love it more when someone else does it, especially for me, if you can understand, as a pastor, I love it when other people say the things that I would like to say. That means I feel like I'm being successful when that happens. So when someone says, Jesus wasn't a real person, the born again thing, Jesus wasn't a real person. Jesus wasn't a real person. Now, in my mind, I'm going, dude, there's more historicity around the existence of Jesus than Napoleon, than Abraham Lincoln. I mean, it's like crazy, okay? Like, there's just more. So I could go, dude, you are wrong. I don't care if you believe in Jesus or not, that's wrong. But I will never do that. I will go, I honestly, like, to me, when the dogma comes up, ooh, I want to hear what everybody thinks. And then it's like people are going, come on, he's got to be real. I just don't believe he's the Messiah. And then someone else, so I would go, does anybody else think that Jesus is just not a real person in history? And then someone goes, well, I've thought that in the past. And then just let it breathe, let it live, because you want people to arrive there on their own, not because you told them, well, I'm the authority here. There's a difference between being authoritative and authoritarian. And authoritarian is, here's the answer. I am the oracle of God. That is a bad way to lead people. Authoritative is, hey, I want to help us find that answer. The other thing is even on dogma, just maybe you and I have a side conversation, still faith, man. There is ways you can have evidence, and there's probability and all that stuff. But man, that's not the world that people live in. People are questioning and figuring it out, and they need to arrive based upon the substance of things unseen. You know what I mean? So that, to me, it's just more fun to not bring the dogma. And you know what I mean?
But you answered the question right off the bat when you said the truth should be presented.
The truth, you want to, as a facilitator, you would like to, over the life of a group or in a conversation, have what the Bible actually says about whatever that thing presented in front of people. And then people have to make their own decision. So, like I said, when I'm teaching and preaching on Sunday, I'm not asking for forgiveness. Boom. I'm going to tell you what I think. This is what the Bible says. You came in here, I'm telling you, right? That's preaching, right? Stand up, sit down, gather around, I'm telling you. When I'm in a group setting, I'm not that. This is a conversation, right? So that's how do you want to add to that?
No, that's great. I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead. We got 5 minutes and then we're done, yeah.
You kind of said that in the beginning. We touched on that like week one. You said that that's where you find yourself just saying, hey, let's see what the Bible says on that.
Sure.
Kind of lean back to Scripture. But is there a time at some point, just from my business, I see this a lot, where you just get that individual that's almost in a group setting that becomes, the guy tries to take the group hostage or becomes like a cancer to the group where you have to outweigh the rest of the group versus how do you handle that situation?
Yeah, when there's someone, Carmen, I'm sorry, do you want to talk about that?
I mean, I can piggyback. Go ahead.
Why don't you go first?
I am a firm believer that some of these call for a one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. I would take that person aside too and say, hey, yeah, that's right. No, but say, hey, what's your motive and what's going on? Because usually there's something a little bit deeper. That's what I would do. I would have a one-on-one conversation.
I would not. People live in a conversational, I want to say what I want to say world. And so when someone says something that I know is off and that could take people hostage and lead people the wrong way, I don't get afraid. I just don't. And again, I've never had something that's just like, I feel like this, insurrection happening. I've never felt that or anything. I've had people say stuff that I know we have some people in the group that can be influenced by that. And so I'm nervous a little bit, and I want to make sure that the truth gets presented. But when someone is got their own agenda, that's a one-on-one.
If I can just use, I know just a minute, but before my wife and I started coming to 514, we had been going to Vineyard for 5-6 years, and we were involved in a small group that wasn't necessarily here. This was following Dave Ramsey's course. We had a
Yeah.
financial accountability group that we met with, and I found myself in a position where I think I was getting a little bit more uncomfortable with it. We weren't leading the group, but we had a group leader that within several weeks of meeting, on a regular basis, it started off with just little things like, things that were directly geared towards, I can't believe our pastor said that.
Yeah.
It started off small, and then it got to the point where the entire thing was being led to, almost like you said, her agenda.
Yeah.
And, to me,
Was she the leader?
she was the group leader.
Huh.
We're hoping to avoid that
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was a point where I said, well, not only is she trying to discredit the pastor, the church, but I could see, and I kind of went to Andrea and said that, I got to be honest with you, I'm not comfortable
Yeah.
with the situation. This individual, obviously, and we haven't, and maybe I was perceiving it more than what somebody else was, but
Sure.
but I can see that happening in certain situations, and I don't think that would come from
Well, I would say to that particular scenario, this is something we haven't said. This is something we say as a staff all the time. As a leader, you have to view yourself in the hierarchy. Okay, you're in a hierarchy, right? Carmen's the group director, and she's your coach and leader. And so we're talking about damage control next week. And that means that when there's a certain issue or a person or a problem or something that's like that, whatever it is, or a leader has a problem, then there's a chain of command, right? I mean, it's a soft one. This isn't World War III. I mean, we'll tighten it up if we need to. Brett will be the first lieutenant. But the bottom line is that when it comes to problems as a leader, if you have a problem with the church, or you have a problem with the pastor, or you have a problem with groups, or you have a problem with the music, or you have a problem with the children's, or you have a problem with the student, listen, you need to write this down. You need to never forget this. You need to never forget this. Complaints go up. Praise goes down. Never should you, as a leader of people, undermine what you are being led through by taking shots at the top to the people that you are influencing. As a leader with dignity, you should, if you can't lead, step away. Step down before stepping on the leadership, okay? And if you have a problem with what I said on Sunday, or what happened with the children's ministry, or the music, or the opener, or David McCreary, which you will, then you need to come to the leadership and talk about it. But we have had some times in groups where some of the leadership is questioning what we're doing and why we're doing it. And, oh, you guys, this is why we are doing this. We remember the first week we talked about bought in. She talked about Michigan. You're bought in. You have to be fully bought in. We did say praise goes down, and we did not. Well, that is a leadership axiom that you need to remember for the rest of your life. You should take that to your job. That's the right way to operate. Okay, that's the right way to operate. That leader was just destroying the purpose of having a great discussion where people are discovering what God is doing. And now we're talking about the church. And if there's a problem at the church, fine. Go and lead somewhere where you don't have a problem with the church. Right? Right? I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but you can't do that. Any other questions or thoughts? I know it's 9 o'clock. Next week is our last week. All right? So we're going to have a great time. We'll have a little celebration, and we'll give you guys some ideas as to what's coming next. Yeah?
When you're a group leader, how do you get paid? Do you guys write checks? Is it cash?
Oh, Thomas.
I'm asking for tax purposes.
Tax purposes? There's a way, man, but
Tax exempt,
you're not
okay.
helping yourself out right now.